Welcome to Impact Farming, where we introduce you to the people and ideas that will have a massive impact on your farming operation. Brought to you by Farm Marketer. Sit down, start the engine, and let's roll with today's show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Impact Farming Show. Today, I have an amazing returning guest joining us. We have Terry Betker from Backswath Management. Welcome back, Terry.
Hi, Tracy. Thanks. I really enjoy doing these sessions, so it's good to be here.
Awesome. I love when you're on the show. We have such great discussions, and today, I am interested in bringing a neat conversation to our audience. And it's a little bit something that's a pet peeve of mine. And it's how as farmers, we tend to just approach the bank without much strategic thought. And if you think of it, Terry, roll with me here.
Okay.
Farm debt and borrowed money is a big part of our costs as farmers. And I would like to put a disclaimer out there that I don't know that we as farmers put enough thought or strategy into how we borrow money, the structure of debt, who we go to. I think it's kind of just, we need money, let's go somewhere and hope they give it to us.
Yeah.
So I want to have a conversation about traditional lending, what we do now, and pick your brain if there's a better way for farmers to go about borrowing money. How's that sound?
Well, that sounds really good. I like that segue.
Okay,
Yeah.
Good. Well then, why don't we get you to quickly tell our audience a little bit about you, and then we will roll right into some of the questions I have for you.
Sure. We're farm management consultants, Tracy, and help farm families, all over Canada, but primarily in Western Canada. And one of the things we help them with is their planning. Financial management comes into the discussion a lot for the reasons that you say, that there's a lot of investment in farms, and some of that investment is finance. So most of what we talk to farms has some application of finance, but things like we do bookkeeping for farms. We have peer groups that farmers participate in. What else? We have a proprietary software program that farmers subscribe to and use that calculates their ratios and gives them decision-making support to it. So that's a little bit about Backswath. Specific to lending, though, I'd like to say two things. One, I've never been a lender. I've done this being talk to farmers about finance and borrowing money and managing money and managing their commitments with them to banks, but I've never been a lender. And the other thing is I primarily teach lending at the U of M in the diploma program. Okay. And the program that I teach is highly applied. It's just based on, there's no textbook. It's just based on what I've observed over time from a lending perspective. So I wanted to put those two prefaces to the discussion here. Everything that you and I will talk about is based on my observation.
Oh, love that. And I know you've worked with so many farmers, and to me, and I'm sure you can second that, firsthand experience is the best experience, right? I'm sure you've seen the good, bad, and ugly on many farms. So yeah. I am excited to have you to chat about this because, again, farmers, we love to produce. So much decision-making goes into the crop variety, the fertilizer, the equipment. I think a lot of those things. And there's brilliant farm business managers, but even myself, am I as strategic with my borrowing and my farm debt as I probably should be? Probably not. And you're gonna clue us in right away. So why don't we start there? What do you traditionally see farmers doing when it comes to lending? And then let's roll into some of the things that have changed when it comes to lending and borrowing money.
Okay, I will. And when I was listening to your segue, it made me think of this. Let me frame what we're going to talk about here just a little bit differently.
Okay.
Farmers make all kinds of investment in their business. Investment in land, buildings, and equipment, obviously. Investment in inputs. They make an investment of their time and their energy in the business. But what if we thought about the relationships that they have with lenders as an investment in those relationships? Okay, and so why that kind of makes sense to me is that you always, I think, want to try to optimize the return that you're getting from that investment. So when we talk about this in this session here, maybe we could kind of keep that in mind, that the whole purpose of, or not the whole purpose, that's too much of a generalization, but if I'm a farmer and I'm farming, obviously I'm borrowing money, then that's an investment that I'm using. And how do I get the best return on that investment? So we can obviously get a return on that by how we use that money. But I'm thinking this discussion is going to be more specifically at the investment with the financial institution and how we negotiate more favorable terms. Because if you can negotiate more favorable terms, then you get a better return on the investment that you're drawing from that relationship. Does that make sense?
Yes, I love it. That was a perfect way to frame it. Thank you.
Yeah. So then you asked me, what do we traditionally, or how did you say, what do I see farmers traditionally doing?
Yeah, kind of set the scenario for how we operate for the most part now and some of the changes, and then we'll roll into some of your ideas that you have for farmers.
A lot of what we're going to talk about, Tracy, is generalization here. So there's going to be farmers at different ends of the comments that I'm going to make here. And this is the first one. So what do they typically do? I think typically or traditionally, they're more of, well, go ask for money and hope we can get it. And so that would be one of what I see farmers traditionally do. I see farmers traditionally looking at borrowing money ad hoc, piecemeal. I want to buy this. We need to buy this, and so we're going to finance it. And so piecemeal type borrowing. And I see farmers pretty traditional. Again, I'm going to set emphasis again. I'm generalizing, but I do generalized comment is that I think that the bank, the financial institutions, the ones that lend money, have evolved faster in how they or what they do and how they make money available to farms than farmers have kept pace with what's going on. So what I'm trying to say is farmers have still think of lenders traditionally, and lending has changed and is changing. So that's another one. I think farmers are highly guilty of just accepting that it is what it is, and whatever the bank or credit union or whoever we're borrowing money from is giving us, that's the way it is. So too much focus, I believe, on short-term needs and not enough about what's the long-term benefit from borrowing money. So those would be some traditional things that I think farmers are guilty of. They view borrowing money and the relationships with lenders not that much different than they did years ago, and the industry is changing.
Okay. So why don't we talk about some of those changes that you've seen in lending?
This is going to date me big time. So that's yeah, it's okay. It's all fair ball, but I'm going to go back a number of years, and if we, and I'm going to go back to the late 70s, and I'm just going to quickly go through the evolution of my observation, what's changed in lending.
Okay.
So in the 70s, generally, farms had too much access to credit and too much access to money. And a lot of the decisions that, and I'm going to refer to them as banks, and I hope I don't offend FCC or MASC or the credit unions, but I know I'm going to refer to them as banks.
Okay.
So I should refer to them as financial institutions. So financial institutions generally made their lending decisions on security value. So land at that time was going up. I'm not like it is now, but at that time, yeah, it was going up. There was lots of equity, and they lent against the equity, security-based lending. Well, that all came to a screeching halt in the 80s when there's all this debt, and farmers couldn't pay for it. Okay, well, it was good that there was security there available to the financial institution because some farmers had to give back the asset because they couldn't make the payment on it.
Shoot.
Okay, so that was not a strategy that banks and financial institutions wanted. They don't want to take back assets. Two reasons. One, it's negative discussion, and they want to have positive discussions because they want to lend more money. And any time that a financial institution takes or spends trying to get money from a farmer, get payment from a farmer, is time that they can't be talking to another farmer and lending more money. Oh, that all changed in the 80s, and because it was just not what they wanted to, not the relationships they wanted to be in. Okay, so they moved from being security-based lenders to where they became cash flow-based lenders. Okay, we're going to lend money to farms as long as they can demonstrate that they can make the payments. That's the cash flow part of it. Okay, so what that did for a lot of farms is it took them from where they had too much access to credit to where they didn't have enough access to credit. Okay. So in the 90s, then what we ended up seeing was the retailers offering input packages to farms. So a bank would lend money to a farmer to buy equipment and land when they give them a certain amount of money for operating, but typically not enough money for the farm to operate. And so what the retailers, and we took a look at this and said, this is an opportunity. So if we go to a farm and we say, if you buy your inputs from us and then finance it with us, they get the sale, and then they'll get the farmer, we'll pay them. Well, generally, next step, the retailers decided that they didn't want to be in the business of lending money. That wasn't their core business model, and so then they basically subcontracted those programs. And to this day, different financial institutions provide blanket credit that any of the retailers use to finance farm input loans. That still occurs. So coming through into the 2000s, and then we had the bump and the profit margins widened, and banks, lenders were still at that time predominantly lending off of cash flow. They're always concerned about their security. I mean, they have to be. The business model requires that they have enough security in case something does happen at the farm where the farm can't make the payments. So they have to have adequate security. So they've always had security as a factor in their lending decision processes. But starting in the late 80s and through till the 2000s, the primary decisions on whether to make a loan or not were on the farm's ability to make the payments, cash flow, profit. So with the land going up though now since 2010, sure, the discussions are still highly centered around profit generation, but increasingly lending decisions are now made on asset value, security value. So what's changed is that kind of migration over time in the approach from lenders. The margins, in a previous episode, remember we talked about a debt servicing ratio. The debt servicing ratio in the 80s and what they use as a guideline in 2020, no different. So there is some commonality across all that, but the foundational discussion and approach has changed quite a bit over time, and I think to the better. Actually, I think that in my opinion, generally there's a pretty healthy relationship now between decisions on the part of a farmer to borrow money and a part of a lender to lend it on how much security is there, how much do I have to give up for security, can I get some security released if I'm a farmer, and my proven ability to make my payments. So part and parcel with that whole process, and I believe this is significant over time, Tracy, is that the primary relationship manager at a lender in the 80s was typically could be a lifelong employee at a bank or in a community, and long time relationships with their clients, curl with them in the Elks Club or on the school board, whatever, part of the community. And that became really awkward when some farms couldn't make their payments, right? So now you're meeting somebody on the street saying hi, and met him at curling last night, and he's coming in an hour, and you're going to tell them, well, how come you can't make that payment?
Yeah,
that became really awkward. Yeah, a little awkward. And to this day, the relationships and how lenders manage some of those has changed to a large degree. Okay. So every financial institution will have a primary relationship manager. A person has that point of contact with any given farmer. But the information is captured at the local branch, and then the decisions are made by some credit committee or some risk group or whatever the different financial institutions call them in Calgary or Toronto or Winnipeg or wherever these decisions are made. And those decisions are taken out of the hands of the farmers, or pardon me, of the relationship managers.
Okay.
That was purposefully done. And again, it kind of makes sense, right? A bit frustrating for farmers, because farmers go in and they get, this may sound like a bit of a negative comment, and it's certainly not intended to be, but sometimes the farmers hear from their relationship manager that, this looks good, but then the message comes back from head office that it's not so good, and things change. So that can be sometimes a little bit awkward. So that's something else that's changed quite a bit. To the farmer's benefit, I believe, lenders are incredibly more flexibility in how to structure debt. Terms, rates, repayment, flexibility on if you can't make a payment, you get a principal timeout. There are a lot of programs available to farms from financial institutions that didn't exist years ago. Okay. So it's a really competitive market out there when it comes to lenders wanting to lend money to farms. So and they all have their programs that are attractive to farms.
Well, and that was one of the questions, and you'll probably roll right into it. Now, I love that explanation of the history of lending. I think you've had a few more days on this planet Earth than I have, so that was really neat to hear all that, Terry. Thank you. Now, are you ready to roll into where we're at now and how competitive we are, the banks are?
Sure. And I say this by way of observation, is that if a farm family is listening to this discussion and they're wonder if we could get different deal someplace, there will be banks or lending institutions out there that will want their business. And the stronger the financial position of the farm is, then the more attractive and the more competitive the other financial institutions are going to be to get their money.
Okay.
I guess how I would speak, Tracy, to the fact that banks are by my observation really competitive right now is that all the rates are highly negotiable. Rates and fees are negotiable, and they're pretty attractive right now. Lenders. One of the other things that's changed at lending, and that's why I remember I said I've never been a lender, so I don't have first-hand insight into this, but I know enough lenders and I've talked to them in general that how they're compensated for what they do is different now than it was 20 years ago.
Okay.
And so they're compensated for lending money, more products, visas, get their agri-invest. So there's a whole bunch of different metrics that are used by lenders to compensate their farmers. Lenders are the relationship managers are much more amenable or willing to go out to a farm and visit those farms and see what's going on. I mean, there are some really, as I said earlier, there are some really positive, I think, changes in that whole relationship that a farm could potentially benefit from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good transition point, Terry. I don't want to cut you off if you have more to say on that, but that might be a good point to roll into. What should farmers look for in financial institutions and the relationships that we form with our bankers? And then I want to go into the biggest mistakes that we currently make. So yeah. I'm not sure which one you want to speak to first.
Well, let's start with the first one. What should they look for? I think the most important thing is the relationship that they have with the people they talk to. I think most farms that I talk to really value the relationship that they have with their primary credit person, whatever those titles are called in the different institutions.
Okay.
Well, the relationships matter, and why? Because the farmer, it's more of a discussion between the lender and the farmer. And if there's comfort in that relationship, then that's an easier discussion. And if that relationship has a little bit of length attached to it, in other words, if there's some stability in that relationship, then the lender will have a better appreciation of what the farm's dealing with and what their needs are. So I think one of the most important things is that a farmer is looking for is that relationship. Is that a relationship in which we want to work? Now, at the institution, then I'm interested, if I'm a farmer, in what are their programs? How have they organized themselves? So who makes the credit decisions? Who might come to my farm? So if I'm a farmer, could I expect to get the VP of one of the charter banks to come out to my farm at some point? Maybe. And it's that's all then part of that whole decision making process. So I'm interested in what any financial institution's programs are, and then I'm also interested in access to information. So we're talking about borrowing money, but what other information could a farmer get from that relationship they have with their financial institution, and that might benefit their business. It goes without saying that the farmer should be of the opinion that their lender is genuinely interested in their outcomes, not just there to sell them something, not just there to lend them money.
I like that.
So it's business, Tracy, but it's largely business in the overlay of that whole personal interaction. We've done this. We've done this. What I mean this is the discussions you have with farm families and people like me that come on to your show and that I have. I mean, it is a we discussion. So we're all working with farm families, and it's just like financial institutions are working with farm families. So if that relationship isn't comfortable, then I think the farm family should look for options. I had a call literally this week, Tracy, with a young farm family who were at a certain financial institution, and so we got talking about finance. And now they're with a new institution because the person they were talking to at the old bank went to a different bank, and they followed that person because they really liked that relationship. That was of value to them.
Amen to that. If you find a good banker, you don't want to let him go. I've had good ones leave and the next one comes in. It's like, do you even get this? Do you even care? Like, you could just tell it's not there, right? And then your comfort level, business is relationships.
Yeah, it is. Something pretty specific that I would be looking for from the relationship with the bank, it has to do with making security or releasing security, Tracy.
Okay.
So I would, and my observation are different financial institutions have different opinions, I guess, on that. And the point I'm making is a farmer will borrow a bunch of money and they'll secure that with mortgages on land. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's say that they borrow $2 million and they put up $4 million worth of land. And okay, so the financial institution has that security interest in that land. And then as that debt goes down, at some point, the financial institution is oversecured. They don't need all that. Sure. So the discussion that I suggest that farmers have is, at what point will that financial institution release some of that land? And so this is change because banks are, and I understand this, they're reluctant to release security. But once they got it, they like it. But this is business. Mm-hmm. And I've had farmers successfully be able to get their financial institution to put in writing the guidelines that they're going to use for when they will consider releasing the land. Because I by way of experience, years ago, here's how it went. Talk to the farmer, say, well, did you talk to the lender about releasing land? Yeah, they absolutely will consider that at the time comes. So when the debt went from $1 million to 500, is that when the times come?
Yeah.
And so they talked about it, said, yeah, we'll do it. But what I'm saying is that I've seen where the financial institution might put some parameters around that. They might say, if that debt gets to $500,000, then we only need $2 million worth of land. And I don't know that they'll put it into a contract and sign it on that exactly, but they'll put it into something has a little more substance than a verbal promise. And why I don't think it's reasonable to expect them to enter into a hard agreement on that is because there could be other extenuating circumstances that might factor into that decision to release land. But I would be really interested, if I'm a farmer, talking to a lender about what their policies are. That's different in philosophy. Their policies are around holding security and when they might consider releasing some of that security. It's real. I know of one farm family. Tracy, I talk to a lot of farms, and I have farm clients, but I don't have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients. I'm busy enough with the farmers that I talk to. But the point I want to make is one of the farms that I talk to a lot from Saskatchewan. It's a larger farm, carries a lot of debt, and they have been very successful in getting land released. And the woman on the show, if she's on the show here, she would say to you, well, Terry, you told us years ago that we should aggressively try to get land released. So she just went ahead and over time has effectively been able to negotiate a quarter here, a quarter there, and get the mortgages on it discharged.
I think that's something that most of us wouldn't even think about. So that's great that you're bringing that up.
Well, Tracy, it works both ways. So a mortgage that's free and clear, a piece of land that's free and clear is free and clear. If you had $4 million worth of land in a mortgage and you only owed $100,000 on it, there's virtually no risk in that. Mm-hmm. But that land is still encumbered. So it works both ways. So and the both ways part is that farmers should, if they can, get the security interests in land released, but they should be hyper aware of the implication of mortgaging free land, clear title land. And I will never say don't do it. Well, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't have said that. Okay? Is
this another depends?
Well, this is another depends. Yeah, it's another depends. And I'm sorry, I sometimes say things and I think, well, it's actually, I really can't say that. But I would caution a farmer to think carefully about mortgaging unencumbered land. Sometimes it is absolutely unavoidable, but I would be cautious about doing it.
Okay.
Anyway, there are probably other things that I would be really interested in. So we're talking about borrowing money. I would be really interested in knowing from a financial institution what they might be able to provide to me on the investing side. Back to the other. Remember I said what other programs do they have, the financial information? So most of the financial institutions have people who will manage deposits and there's check writing and there's a whole pile of programs that are available to farms at banks. So I would look at what the whole package is. Sorry, I've rambled on here a little bit.
No, that's good. And I guess you're kind of answering two of my questions all at once here. So some of the things to look for in the banks, and then I know we want to go into biggest mistakes as well. So
yeah. Well, the mistakes. I thought about that as you were saying. What are the biggest mistakes? And I think if I was going to prioritize them, the biggest mistakes farms make is going and buying the piece of equipment before telling the bank that's what they've done.
Okay.
And so why is that a mistake? Well, because if I'm a farmer and I go trade the combine in and I traded say it's an $800,000 combine and I traded mine in for $300,000 and now I just borrowed $500,000. And then I just go to the bank and expect I'm going to get it financed. So perhaps the loan structures are there that it's going to occur. But I think that farmers should be very, very careful to go and talk to their lender before they sign the contract.
Okay.
And in a situation where the farms may be a little bit more leveraged, that's different. If the farm doesn't have a lot of debt, well, the lender is always going to approve that. But there can get a situation where maybe it starts to get to be a little bit of an awkward situation. And now I buy that. Let's say that's my situation, and my balance sheet looks, I got a lot of debt, and I've just gone and signed this combine deal because guess what? You can't get a deal like that. This was a awesome deal. So I went to and let's role play this a little bit, Tracy. You're my loans officer at a branch, and I might make an appointment. Probably I didn't. Probably I just walk into the bank and say, hey, can I talk to Tracy? And of course, yeah, you're going to talk to me. And I said, I just bought a combine. Well, in fact, I might say I bought a combine like a week ago or whatever. And it's $500,000. And now what do you do? Because if I'm carrying a lot of debt, and it starts to get awkward because you manage the relationship. So you're obviously, I think, going to try to help me out, but you don't make the decision. Somebody in Toronto makes that decision. So now you got to go to bat for me on a decision that might put you in a bit of an awkward spot. You can't. Well, I guess if I did it enough times to me, you could start to, kind of tune me in a little bit, but I don't think that's respectful. Now, there's more to this. Let's say that, yeah, the loan goes through and all that. But when I'm the farmer and I'm borrowing money from you, you're going to have security in my land and in that combine and in all my inventory. You're going to be, you're going to have lots of security. But in a farm like mine here, theoretically, that's got a lot of debt, then while you're adequately secured, there is more risk to your financial institution, and that would be from my neighbor who comes in next who has no debt. Now, what do you do with that? Well, likely the interest rates that you're prepared to give me are going to be higher than they will on my neighbor. The fees that you charge me in a year to, like the loan admin fees, are going to be higher than what my neighbor might get. And and then you might at some point start to restrict access to the credit or lower my operating loan availability. So those are some of the outcomes of a relationship where you're starting to not really question the fact that I bought the combine per se. This is important, Tracy. Okay. But you start to question my management ability. And then a large part, and I know this because one of the VPs of one of the banks told me this, so I don't imagine that that's much different in policy than any others. He said to me increasingly, decisions around lending money and the costs associated with lending money are factoring in management, not just the hard security.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so then...
As it should.
Yes, as it should. That's not put in place to disadvantage the farmer. That's put in place to actually respect the farmers that are doing it, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, then just to go sign a deal with the equipment and then walk in and call you out of your office and say, hey, could you lend me $500,000? That doesn't reflect positively on my management. Now, how you could put the value on the combine and the value on the land and drill that decision down to numbers. But how do you put a number on management? And institutions do, but it's subjective. And so my job as a farmer is to present myself to you as capable as I can when it comes to being a manager. And so the biggest mistake that they make, I think, is they go and borrow the money or make the deal before they talk to you about it. Then another thing that I think doesn't go well has got to do with communicating.
Okay.
So it's and there's two parts to that. So I'm just talking about communicating. The failure of communication here as being have negative implications. But I think farmers should communicate. I think I should come to you, Tracy, on at least a couple of times a year when I'm not asking to borrow money. Just set up an appointment. I want to come in and talk to you about all the good things that are going on in my business.
Oh, that's different.
Well, yeah, and say, well, this has gone well and that's gone well. And then the other thing that I want to communicate is something that's maybe not gone well, not having to do with buying a piece of equipment, just something that didn't go well in the business. And then I could come to you and say, well, what would it be? Well, maybe I had an employee long-term disability or something, and it's had a really significant impact. So I also have a dairy, and my herdsman has been off work for 3 months. So I got to come and tell you that in the year, not wait until the year end when my income is down, and that's why. So the number two thing I think that farmers don't do, could do a better job of, is communicating with their lender.
Okay.
Both good stuff and not so good stuff. Long-term plans, 100%. How do you, so we're talking about here, we're going to talk about in a couple of minutes here, maybe about different ways that we can structure debt and negotiate on loans. How do you know what programs to suggest to me if I'm not able to tell you what we're working towards? And what is our long-term plan here? That's another aspect of communication. And I think then the third one is not being able to provide to a lender the plan. What are we working towards? And the last one is got less to do with what I can provide to you, and more to do with, I think there's too many farms out there that just accept that what the bank is providing them for interest rates and terms, etc., is the best they're going to do. And Tracy, this is again a generalization, but something that I've observed too many times, and I've written about this actually, too many times where I've talked to farmers and I looked at their interest rates, I looked at how their debt has been structured at a bank, and I'm thinking, I know you can do better. And they've gone to their financial institution and negotiated better rate. And then the family and I have talked about it. And so we have it. Here's how the discussion goes. Well, first off, the farm family is happy they're getting lower rates because saving money. But there's a little bit of frustration in their part, because why didn't the bank offer us better rates? Why did we have to wait to ask? Well, this is business, right?
Right.
This is business. And you could perhaps critically suggest that you as a lender, Tracy, should always be trying to give me the absolute best deal you can. And maybe we could have a good discussion about that. But maybe I'm more inclined to be of the belief that, hey, it's my business. Just like I'm going to negotiate how much I'm paying for fertilizer, I should be negotiating, maybe should I not, with how much I'm paying for interest?
Yeah.
Well, those are the mistakes that come to mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are good ones. There's a lot of really good stuff in there that I think most farmers don't think of. I was actually just quickly jotting that down. So I hope you didn't hear my click clacking, because there was some good stuff in there. Now, where do you want to go? I mean, that was some really good stuff. Don't just take what the bank says. Go in prepared. Don't buy and then ask. Ask and then buy, right? Have a plan. And to me, that's a lot of stuff in my non-farm business that we do. I come in with a business plan. I meet with them. I present the goal. I look like a strong business manager. Hopefully they're confident in me. And then I get the money, right?
Yep.
And they know the big picture of what I'm working towards, a little more context. So I love all of those suggestions. Where do you want to go with this? Some tips and suggestions when approaching lenders or debt structure?
Yeah. Let's talk. Let's start with the tips and see where that goes. So here's what I tell my class: when you want to see your lender, make an appointment, and then I tell them some pretty basic stuff. Don't go in with your work boots muddy. Go in as a business person.
Amen.
And to the younger, and maybe I'm a bit old fashioned here, but to the younger students that I talk to, I suggest that they take their hats off and present themselves as business people. Because if you are expecting to engage, and we're talking about, remember I talked about presenting. I'm trying to present myself as being a manager of a multi-million-dollar business where I could have borrowed millions of dollars, and I want you to think that I'm on top of my game. And so I would, tip number one is make an appointment. I've already talked about, go and see them a couple of times a year, especially when you're not wanting to borrow money, and talk about the good and things that aren't working out. Every farm has things that don't work out like they thought of. And oftentimes it can be severe enough oftentimes that it will have a negative impact on the farmer's ability to generate enough cash flow to make payments.
Yep. That makes sense.
That happens all the time. So here's the management piece of that. Well, you as a lender are keen to try to help me out. But if you think that it's up to you to tell me how I should, or how you think I should work this out, that's different than me coming to you and saying, Tracy, I've had a bad year. This is my situation, and this is what I intend to do about it.
Ooh, love it.
Are you more? I mean, let's pick two farmers. One guy that goes in, two farmers exactly the same, both had an awful year, both lost $500,000. And one goes in and said, this is why I lost $500,000, and this is what I intend to do about it differently. And then I'm going to talk to you about adjusting to payment timing and loans and terming out and any different thing that you can help me with. And the next farmer that comes in and says, some of them will go into the lender, Tracy, and not even know they've lost $500,000. But go into you and say, I lost $500,000, and then expect you to provide the solution. Not your business.
No.
That's tip number two.
I'm going to go a little left field here, Terry, and maybe it's valuable, maybe it isn't, but I got to do it. It's kind of like when you're an employer, whether it's on a farm or a non-farm business, and you have two employees. You pay them to help you out. One comes to you with a problem that's going on, and they said, this is how I'm going to fix it. You go, amen, thank God, now I know why I pay you. The other employee comes, here's the problem, and they dump it on you, and it's called monkey on your back. Yeah. And now the person you pay to solve the problems just threw the problem on your back, and you go, why do I pay you? Come to me with the answer, and then I'm happy and confident in your ability, right?
It works. That's a good
Little
analogy.
left field, but I
No,
think some people can relate to that, right? It's
has direct application. Yep.
yeah, don't add one more burden on my back. If you come to me and say, this is what's wrong, this is what I'm doing about it, you are obviously a person in control of your farm business.
So, tips. I get asked fairly regularly, Tracy, about looking for shopping around.
Mm-hmm.
We've been at financial institution X for years. So there's value in that, right? And the relationships are established, and there's comfort there, and there is a little bit of there can be a significant amount of work in moving from one bank to another, or one financial institution. Tracy, I get asked quite regularly, how often, or by farmers, should we look for different options, shop around? Is there a better deal someplace else?
Okay.
And, there's lots of farms that have long standing relationships with their financial institutions. And there's benefits to that, right? There's the relationships that are in place. There is a cost associated with moving from one bank to the next, new processes, work to be done, and et cetera. And so my answer back to them is yes, and it's to me it's just good business, and I don't think, and again, this is my opinion, I don't think farmers should be shopping their financing every year. I don't think they should shop it, necessarily every 2 years, but I think on a regular basis they should be looking at what other options are out there. Now, what is the number? 3 years, 5 years? I don't know. No more than five. I think. And I have. Well, I think I can say it this way, that first I'm going to say is, of all the lenders I've talked to, I haven't come across one yet that if a farmer came to them and said, well, we haven't looked around for what other options are to us for years and years, and we're happy here. This is not an indication of any unhappiness on our part. We just think it's good business for us to look around. I have yet to have a lender tell me that they thought that was unreasonable. It is good business. Now, here's what I tell that to farms. And I tell farms that if you've been at a financial my opinion, if you've been at a financial institution for years, and you go to them and say, we think that we're going to look around and see what kind of deals are out there, haven't done it forever, and they get attitude or pushback or negative comments back from that financial institution, to me, that's just one reason why the farmer would go shop around, because it is good business. It is good business, and it's a matter of how frequently, and then Tracy, it matters how they do it. Consistent with my comments around the importance of the farmer presenting the image that they're on top of their management game, how they approach this whole process of potentially sourcing new financing options makes a huge difference.
I could see that. Because
if I'm doing business with financial institution number one, and I'm going to go look at 2 or 3 other financial institutions, they're going to look at my financial information. They're going to look at my balance sheet, my income statements. But remember what we talked about, they're also going to try to determine, what kind of a manager am I? Am I on top of my game? And so the more polished, the more business-like the approach that I am using to look at that financing or those financing options, the better. And Tracy, this is not I hope it doesn't come across as self-serving, but we have a process that we take farms through when they're wanting to look for complete new financing. Not maybe when they're just going to go and get some money from one of the other institutions on a one-off basis. I'm talking about we haven't looked for new financing for 10 years, and what else is out there?
I love it.
We have a process that we can guide them through, and I'd be happy to share that process with them. It's not rocket science, but what it does, it's designed to present as positive an image on me as the farmer as I possibly can, because that will give me the most amount of money that I could get at the best rates, at the best terms, at the least cost. And this is going to be a hollow guarantee because I can't back that up, but I guarantee that there will be, and the other reason I can't back it up is because we can't run a placebo. Either a farmer goes in and says, hey, well, how could you help me with my debt? Or they go into 4 or 5 banks with a proposal and say, here. So I just know from observation that the approach that I'm suggesting makes a difference. Yep. And Tracy, I'm talking about significant amounts of money, 6 digits difference in savings. Millions of dollars more available credit in better terms than what some of the farms I've talked to would ever have hoped to achieve. You ask me how aggressive it is out there. It's aggressive, but it's also that there's just more programs, better options that are out there. One of the mistakes, I guess not really a mistake because it just happens over time, but I'll regularly come across farms that have quite a bit of debt. They might have 15 or 20 loans at one institution. Well, that takes the farm time to manage those relationships and make sure the payments are done. Even though they might be coming out automatic payments, there's still bookkeeping entries that are happening. And there's new programs out there. There's blanket programs. There's lenders have programs where they approve a certain upper limit of credit. Mm-hmm. Farmers can manage their own debt. Mm-hmm. As long as they stay on side with some of what they're obligated to do, they manage their own debt. If they borrow $2 million and they pay $100,000 off, they got another $100,000 that they can go borrow without going back to the bank and negotiating another loan.
Okay.
So the programs, it's so significantly different than it was not that many years ago, and to a farmer to be able to use. So what I like about the process that I suggest farmers use is that what it results in is the different financial institutions presenting to the farmer, here's how we could help. And then you'll get the proposals, they call them discussion papers, from different financial institutions that will be quite a bit of difference from one to the other, depending on what's going on. So here's the process that I suggest. First, the farmer has to commit to the time to do this, because it's going to take time to do this.
Yeah.
And then, so commit to the process to do it. Expect that it's going to take 4 months to do it, because this is an involved process. And I'm talking about going from moving all your business or a large percentage of it where you've been for a long time to potentially another financial institution. So that's why there's a lot involved.
That's big. Yeah.
Okay. So there's one point that as the farmer, I've got to decide if I'm going to tell you as my lender that I'm doing this. So my recommendation is yes, because you never want to burn any bridges in this business.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had some farmers that say, well, we've been treated okay at our financial institution, but we don't think that they deserve a look at our business. We want to just go and see what else is out there. It's not right or wrong, but it is something that's really, the farmer has to actively choose whether to tell you that they're looking around or not.
Okay.
And again, I can't tell them that it's right or wrong. My recommendation is to tell you. So anyway, that's number one. Okay, so then the next thing they do is determine which different financial institutions they want to approach. Oh, they may have past relationships, or their neighbor or their cousin or somebody else might have had a good relationship with that particular branch or at that particular location, because you can bank anywhere. I mean, you don't have to bank in your local town. You bank anywhere. You go anywhere to do it. And anyway, you got this process that we follow as an active decision in there of who are we going to approach and how many. Oh, maybe just one. I think 2 or 3. If you start going to 4 or 5, it's overkill, and you'll end up with just too much time. And then it's important. This is where it gets to be really important, and this is designed then to pass that favorable image of me as a manager. So I would identify, let's say it's 3 banks, 3 banks I'm going to go to.
Okay.
And then I find out who the contact person is at that bank, and then I send them a letter. And it could be an email, but it's not a telephone conversation. I send them probably an email this day and age, a letter. That's a bit old, sorry. But you send them an email, maybe with a letter, and in that letter it says, "Dear so-and-so, we are XXX and X, and we are looking for financing and lending services for our business, and this is what one paragraph as to what we're doing, maybe how much money we have invested and how much debt, and then the question: if you would be interested in talking to us further about this, please let us know." Now, okay, so this is going to knock your socks off. I've done this lots of times, and inevitably, one of the institutions that I send I contact won't get back to me. And that just tells you stories, right? So, but, say if I approach 4, I'll at least get 3 positives back. Sure, this is great. So they're already interested. Now, here's the next step is then I would provide them with a little bit of information, an executive summary, 1.5 pages, a little bit more information about what we're looking for. And, I have had farmers get them to sign non-disclosure agreement. It's just a subtle little step that impresses, is purposed to actually respect the farmer's information, but also to convey, again, I'm managing a business. Okay, so let's say that you're interested. You get that executive summary from me, that NDA, you send me that NDA back, and then I send you the plan. So the plan could be as simple or as detailed as you want. My recommendations are that it have the vision, it has the elements of long-term strategy and the plan, and historical financial statements with some financial analysis. What are some of those key ratios? What have some of those key ratios in our business been for the last 2 or 3 years? And then the projection. Here's what we're looking for. And you send that information I send that information to you. And then in my covering letter or my covering email, please find attached the following. I might even include a PowerPoint If I've got a website, I give you my website address. And all of that is information that you're starting to form an opinion about whether or not you want to have me as a client, and then how badly you want to have me as a client.
Very professional.
Yeah. And then, and in my email, say, I look forward to receiving a discussion paper from you as your interest or whatever. Now, you got to tell I got to tell you, full disclosure, that I have contacted other financial institutions. That's only respectful. It's only respectful. And you'll send me back, and Bank X and Credit Union, wherever, they'll send them back. And then, it'll be 6 or 7 pages typically of how you see structuring the credit for my business. And then I just compare them. You'll have in there the amount of money, the interest rates, the different types of programs or loans, the security, the covenants. There's a whole pile of information. And then I just put them in a table and I compare them. And then here's what I think is really important. I am fairly strongly of the opinion is that I don't negotiate you against other financial institutions.
Okay.
It's fair again, my opinion. It's fair for me to come back to you and say, Tracy, thank you for that. I found that really interesting. I don't like, you've got in here $10,000 for a loan and admin fee. I think $5,000 is more reasonable. I could negotiate with you, but I do not think it's good business on my part to say, well, do you know that Bank X offered me $5,000?
Yes, that's classic.
The least you know, the better, right? Because you have no idea what I've got from other financial institutions. And then at some point, the process is I got to make a decision. And then I would then, so this is really important. If I choose to go with you, then I've got to write a letter or phone probably, or go in person to these other financial institutions and say, thank you very much. I appreciate the time you invested in here, but we have chosen to go with Tracy. And why, you could put in why, that would be reasonable in there. And then I come back to you, and we are still only at the discussion papers. So we got to get to the term sheet, because the term sheet is the contract. That's what I sign. And this, even until I sign that term sheet with you, Tracy, it's still all negotiable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I have had lenders who have been successful and not successful with getting the business, appreciate the process, be really favorably impressed with the farmer. That's the intent. Because farms, this is indirect, but businesses have brands. Farms have brands. Farms have an identity. And perhaps I didn't select you. What's your opinion on my business? You're going to speak directly or indirectly positively in your discussions. In fact, you might be so interested, you might actually be knocking on my door every couple of years and say, hey, would you talk to me again? That's the idea.
Who wouldn't want a good, strong farm business manager on their portfolio?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's great.
That's the process. One last related comment to this, Tracy, is I have farmers ask me, should I have one institution or more than one? And there's differing opinions on that. The benefit, perhaps, of having more than one is the farmer gets to compare rates and stuff, and then that you don't have all my business, that half of my business is someplace else. So the idea is you will be motivated to do your best job to get all my business. There's some logic to that. The negative side of that is you don't have all my business. And if you don't have all my business, I've heard banks start to wonder, well, what's the other institution getting that I'm not getting? And so there are two sides to that. And as long as the farm's financial situation is really strong and favorable, it's less of an issue. But where some farmers' situation starts to weaken, then I've watched financial institutions that don't have all the business start to wonder, well, what are they getting that I'm not getting? And so I don't know if it's I don't know what the right answer to that is, quite honestly, Tracy. I do know that I was at a conference in the States years ago and that question came up, and the presenter answered it this way. And the presenter said, well, at the very least, have another bank in your hip pocket. So if it doesn't work out with you, then I know I can go and talk to person X over here. That's for whatever value that is. I remember that comment that's years ago.
Yeah, that's a hard one. There's no good answer on that one, I don't think. Okay, well, that is fantastic. We covered some good ground. I am going to work to wrap the episode up and get you to leave any parting comments. I want to give one last plug to financial management consultants. If you guys are out there and you're trying to figure this stuff out, don't think you need to do it all yourself. There's people like Terry and many others right across Canada, USA, that know how to work with you guys to figure this stuff out, right? And it's not even an ongoing contract. It could be just, hey, we're at a big transition point. We want to sit down and look at our lending and call in somebody like you, Terry. Sit down. It's a relationship and engagement, and then carry on, right?
Yeah, we're certainly happy to, and that's our business, so it's exactly what we like to do, and we've had some success at doing it. But Tracy, I respect that you're right. There's a lot of other people that farmers could turn to help them out, and it's just good. I think it's just good management sometime to get an outside opinion on what's going on around here.
I agree. Hire the bright minds that we have available to us, right? Yeah. And whether it's Backswath Management, you can't help every farmer. I'm sure you could try, but you guys are a mighty team, but there's a lot of farmers in Canada.
Really. And 100%, Tracy. And you know what I've offered? I really like coming on your shows, and I've offered before, and I might have even said it at the start of this session. If there's things we can help farmers with that don't end up where they owe us money for a fee or something, we'll share resources. There's some things that we could help with. So yeah, we're open to that.
I love that. You guys and you, Terry, you're amazing in trying to help our audience and farmers out in general. I love that. Any parting words before we wrap up? You shared a lot of good stuff there, so no pressure.
Yeah, no, and we're at a good time. Farmers, November, December is a good time to be thinking about some of these things. March and April is a little bit late. One farm actually I did this with just this last year approached me, and we started in April, and I said, "Are you sure?" And he said, "Yeah, once we make a decision to do something, we do it." And they didn't conclude that whole process until August. They did it through their busy time. They just did it as they were able to. But, we're in the winter now. It's a good time to have some of those discussions, Tracy, I think.
It is that time of year. And that's also why right now, November, December, and going into winter, I'm focused on farm management and a lot of the more businessy topics, because it is that perfect time to hone our business skills, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, no closing comments. I like doing these sessions with you, Tracy. Thanks for inviting me.
Love it. Thank you, Terry, for sharing your time and wisdom with myself and our audience. I always appreciate it. Love our conversations. And thank you guys for joining us on another episode of the Impact Farming Show. If you love the episode, like it, share it, and subscribe to the channel and get the word out. Thank you so much, and see you on the next episode. Bye.
You've been listening to Impact Farming. For more great episodes and articles designed to help you manage and grow your farming operation, head on over to farmmarketer.com. Don't forget to sign up while you're there. We will see you on the next episode.